It's in the name.
Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor with Ben and Travis podcast. Today we conclude our discussion about the 3 steps to success. And we had episode 1 where we talked about faith, and we'll hit up our last 2 right after these messages. This episode of the Helping Healing Humor with Ben and Travis podcast is presented by Faulkner University. Faulkner University is a private Christian liberal arts university based in Montgomery, Alabama, with a mission to provide an education anchored by not only intellect, but also character and service. The Faulkner experience aims to educate the whole person. Every individual matters every day. We all want to become better versions of ourselves. No one wants to remain trapped where they are because of missed opportunities and unrealized dreams. At Faulkner University, we believe your dreams don't have an expiration date. We understand that you're looking for more than a degree. You want to find your niche and thrive in your career. Whether you're a high school senior just beginning your trek or an adult student looking for a better path, Faulkner is here to help guide your journey. Go to faulkner.edu to apply or get more info. That's faulkner.edu. I'm Travis Creasy. That's All Pro Counselor with 3 Chord Counseling Shoals in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. Ben Hayes.
How's it going, man? Last week's episode was fantastic. Loved the stuff that you shared about faith last time. And if you guys did not hear that episode, I would encourage you to go back and listen to it first and then come here, because the stuff you shared about faith was fantastic. Not just faith, when you hear that word, and some people may be hearing that and going, this is a episode just about our Christianity. And that's not something I would be about, but some of you might be. This is about faith, hope, and love in every realm of life and in success in all places. And so you shared some really basic stuff about faith.
Yeah, it's fundamental.
Yeah.
If it's a fundamental, then it has to be in everything.
And some of the stuff you shared from what Peter wrote just about the building blocks of that faith were, and you used football as a reference. And of course you could use it in business and you could use it in anything. And so it was really good. So if you didn't hear that, I'd encourage you to go back to it. But as you were kind of finishing up that, as you add to your faith these different things and you come to the end, and it's love. Mm-hmm. And so I think you were going to start kind of transitioning into the other 2 things. So not just faith, but there's also hope and love that are mentioned at the end of 1 Corinthians 13. So do you want to kind of tell us a little bit about those 2 steps?
Yeah, exactly. So we left off with, walking down what I call path of diligently seeking, because it is a path that builds all the way up to love. And that is pushing you in one direction towards success. And as a Christian, it's pushing you towards love, and we know that God is love, so it's pushing you closer to God. But when you look at applying this to business, applying this to your individual life, applying it to the game of football, you are radically changed by the time you get to the end of what Peter is talking about.
Absolutely.
It is a radical change. You are not the same person. I don't care if you're a football player, you are not the same football player at the end of that process as you were at the beginning. It's impossible. You can't be. Yeah. And that's why he says, if those things are yours and increasing, you will not fall, because it is changing you. Every step is changing you, and you're not the same person. So what then allows someone to hold on to that? And when I started looking at how to define hope, that's when, that's when that clicked. How do you hold on to your faith? It's because of hope. Yeah. If you go to Proverbs chapter 29 and verse 18, he says there, without a prophetic vision, a people casts off restraint.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But those who are, they cast off restraint, but the ones who are blessed are the ones who keep the commandments of God. Now, that's Old Testament, so he's probably alluding to the Mosaical law. But if these things, again, are fundamental, and Paul is plainly stating that they are, because it's showing up in his letter in the New Testament after Christ has died and been raised. then he's not talking about Mosaic law in the New Testament.
Yeah.
So, we've got to understand what this keeping the commandments really means. But that first phrase, without prophetic vision, a people cast off restraint. What is a prophetic vision?
Travis, go ahead. I'll let you answer that one.
I think it's an H. That's really what this podcast. We got helping, healing, humor, but I would say that's hope. You hope what God has told you.
Exactly.
If you don't have hope in it, that's you were talking about in the other episode that your wife is entering the radiation process, and that looks a lot different if you don't have hope.
Yeah, exactly. So he's pointing out hope, even though it's not written quote unquote HOPE. Yeah. He's pointing out hope is a prophetic vision. Well, what's a prophet? A prophet is somebody who can foresee
what's going to happen
based on the word of God, or it's someone who presents the word of God. Well, the word of God is truth.
Yeah.
So it is a vision based in truth. And this is when you get into the business world, what's the first thing that the business folks like to sit down and write? Well, two things, actually, a vision statement and a mission statement.
Yeah.
So you're seeing it in the business world, just like you're seeing it in the religious world. The hope is there. So if without hope, a people cast off restraint, what do you think that restraint is?
It sounds like not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They've kind of given up on doing the right things, some of the diligence, right? So
right.
They passed that off. Yeah.
Diligence. That sounds familiar to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Diligently seeking, right?
Yeah.
One of those elements in diligently seeking was self-control. Without hope, people cast off faith. So if you want to keep and maintain faith, hope is absolutely fundamental.
Yeah.
You cannot live without it.
Well, we've probably all are old enough to have had a job where maybe what our responsibilities were not outlined very clearly. Those of us that have done church work, there are plenty of churches that you go to, they expect you to preach or they expect you to do certain events, but it's really vague. And then they come to you and go, well, you're not meeting the expectations we had. Well, I never saw a list of expectations. I didn't have a mission statement or a vision of what this job is supposed to look like. And it's really easy to fail. It's really easy to not hit the mark if you don't know what the expectation is or the prophetic vision in the Old Testament there.
Exactly. So today, our suicide rate is just unbelievable. It's off the charts. And the main reason is people lose their faith because they cannot see going on another day. They have lost that vision. I mentioned,
and we talk about with that hopelessness. A lot of times when we talk about it in the counseling world, that's one of the things that the two words, hopelessness and helplessness, and specifically hopeless. When people become hopeless, they tend to give in to suicidal ideation because, I don't have anything that's holding me here. So
yeah, I'll give you a personal example. I mentioned in the first podcast that in high school, I wanted to be a pilot. That's what I wanted. But when my vision left, I couldn't pursue it because you're not going to be able to get into the seat of the cockpit of a fighter jet if your vision is not 100%.
Yeah.
So at that point, I lost hope. I could never see that happening again. When I graduated from college and I started with the company I was working with that I was telling you about earlier, they had a education program within that company that they would pay for your tuition. Well, at that particular point in time, if you wanted to be a pilot, they would pay for your education, including your hours, flight time.
Wow.
I have beat myself up over the decades for not doing that. But at the time, I had lost my vision. I had lost my hope. And by the time that I got that vision back, they took away the flight hours. So they would pay for everything but the flight hours. And so, but look what happened. I never learned to fly. And I've really beat myself up over that because I had the opportunity, but I did not have the vision.
Yeah.
And so vision, hope is a fundamental of success. If you lose the vision, you will fail. Just like if you cast off your faith, you will fail. If you do not diligently seek, you will fail. So that leads us into the last fundamental, which is love. There are 3 different passages in Paul's letters where he makes a connection that I want to go back to. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 19. He says, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision counts for anything. And by doing that, he's talking about that Mosaical law we mentioned a few minutes ago.
Right.
Those things, that doesn't count for anything. What does count for something? In that passage, he says, keeping the commandments of God is what counts. Now, we know he's not talking about the Mosaical law. So the only thing that's left is what Christ talked about, which is the 2 commands that were there all along, that were consistent. Love God with everything you have, love your neighbor as yourself. And then he gives the disciples a new commandment, and he tells them, love each other as I have loved you. But the fact of the matter is, I can't love my brethren the way Christ has loved me if I don't understand those 2 laws that summed up the entire Mosaical law, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what he's talking about. Then when you go over to Galatians chapter 5 and verse 6, he uses the exact same language. He says, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision counts for anything. But in that passage, instead of saying keeping the commandments of God, he says faith working through love.
Yeah.
All right. Now, here's where it really gets fun. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 15, he does it again. He says, neither uncircumcision or circumcision counts for anything, but what does count? A new creation. So now faith working through love, keeping the commandments of God, is equated to a new creation. And this is where that path of diligently seeking was taking us the whole time. A radically different way of life. And that's why in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, Paul says, I will show you a more excellent way. And he's talking about the way of love. And so you can go into 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and you can see how he describes how you're going to recognize this way of life. But the fact of the matter is, love is a way of life. And the only way that you can get there is through faith and hope. And just as an example, one of the characteristics he says in there is love does not seek its own, right? Does not seek its own way. I like the way that some translations say it that way. You guys, do you remember a popular restaurant slogan that sounds familiar?
Have it your way.
Have it your way.
Yeah.
Burger King.
Yeah.
Okay. If you go through there and you look at those things, you will start recognizing different slogans throughout many businesses where they're appealing to love. One of the books I read was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Carnegie, right? A lot of people, very old book, but a lot of people still read it today. If you read his book, you can go through chapter 13 in 1 Corinthians, and you can see where it's almost parallel with what he's saying on how to treat people, how to appeal to people. He's saying, essentially, do it out of love.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are the 3 fundamentals. And when you look at it, when you practice those 3 fundamentals, you are radically different. And guess what? When people succeed, they're radically different people.
Yeah.
They're not average. Okay.
I was thinking about, there's a book by Carol Dweck that talks about, it's called Mindset, and it's just about the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. And some of that comes into play even in that book when it talks about the growth mindset. The people who succeed went to like every person in their business and said, what do we need to do? What do we need to do differently? What are we doing that's good? What are we doing that's bad? You know, different questions to everybody in the company made everybody feel as though they had a voice. They had something that they could add to it. And so along with the mission statement and all of that stuff with the business, they probably, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they reformatted all of that based on what these answers were from people. So
I find it interesting going to being a football coach, going to these football clinics, whether it's the Alabama one or the Auburn or wherever. They had coaches from all over different schools. And, you know, for the first 5 years that I went to those, you didn't hear the word love. Like, it was technique, it was all this stuff. And then like the last 5 years, I mean, you got Nick Saban up there, which however you feel about him, he's talking about the first building block is that these kids know you love them. And
absolutely,
you know, if people know, and you look at the games we watched and we'll be watching, you know, the game to them is not over until the seconds are off. And you know, we're sitting there watching, Ben and I watch the Iron Bowl together, and the whole time we're super negative, like, man, we're terrible, this blah blah blah, the rest blah blah, and the players play the next play. You know, they're just playing the next play, and there's this hope that as long as there's time on the clock, there's time. You know, and I've got an older brother who has cerebral palsy, and this probably comes natural to him, but he does not want you talking trash on the players. And if we ever lose, it's only because we ran out of time. You know, and it's that hope, it's that love that these guys have for each other, and then throwing the fact that some of them or most of them are better athletes than I'll ever be, and their willingness to sacrifice for one another. And what turns us off? Well, that one guy who thinks it's all about him. You know, no matter how talented he is, it may be great to have him, but you know he's out there for himself versus I'm here for the team. Aspect. And so that's just something that has stood out to me the last few years that you really hit on, was this aspect of love. These mean football coaches that you would not think the first thing out of their mind or their mouth is love. That's where we have to start.
Yeah, you look at things like the special forces, SEAL teams, those kinds of things. You know, macho men, they might not throw the love word around all the time, but what keeps them in that spot next to their brother standing right beside them is the fact that they know that guy loves them, and he would give his life for them. So it's absolutely fundamental to success. Now, that's not to say that somebody could come in and use hope and faith and still find some success, but they're not going to find ultimate success.
Yeah.
If love's not there, they're not going to find it. If, say, that we're trying to work out of faith and love, we've read Carnegie's book, we're trying to apply his things, but then we don't really have this hope or this vision of where we're going, you're still not going to be successful.
Yeah.
So
just the combination of all three of them. It's such an interesting thought, because the things I've never thought about from those passages, but I love when and I've kind of discovered that some over the last several years where people take a passage that, I mean, it's not taking it out of context because it's talking about those things in context, but it's really powerful when you can see how a passage sort of can apply across the lines. It's not just here about your faith. This is a concept that runs through life. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what you're kind of getting at with this, this runs through all of life. It's not just this one specific piece.
Exactly. And there's
go ahead. I'm sorry.
There's a concept too in the Bible and in the world in general known as victory, right? Well, victory is success over adversity. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if we want to have victory, which is what I term ultimate success, you have to have all three fundamentals.
Yeah. I love it. That's something, I mean, even in my own mind, as you've been talking through these two episodes, I'm churning out things in my own head that I need to do differently and in ways that will help me. So I hope that our listeners have gotten the same thing. Travis?
Yeah, just to that point, I think that we, even as Christians, have bought in that religion itself is a bad word. And I get that our relationship with Jesus is the most important, a personal relationship with Jesus. But I think the fact that we kind of bought into religion as a bad word, we also throw in all those three things, right? Faith, people equate that to religion. And I get that and I understand that. But I think that's the point. Like if we just throw out anything that's religious, like it doesn't have any bearing on this secular thing. More and more I live, the more and more I'm like, is there really anything that's secular? I mean, how do we work that definition?
Not when it comes to the three fundamentals.
No. I think it's
when you start to go out and you look at everything in life around you now, like I did. Yeah. Once I started down this path and I started looking out everything in life around me, those three fundamentals are there. They are everywhere. Yeah. Even in the Bible, front cover to back cover, they repeat themselves over and over. Sometimes they're all explicitly there, but other times they're implicitly there. So if you're reading the context, they're all three there.
Well, in context to Hebrews 11, where this all started, the whole rest of the chapter, those stories define faith, hope, and love all through them. And even though those three words aren't all used, faith is obviously used. You see it through the whole thing. And
sometimes it's in spite of their own. And most of the time, you look at some of these guys and we call them the heroes of the faith, and rightfully so. I'm not saying we shouldn't call them that, but they're not perfect. They make mistakes and they make decisions that we scratch our head and go, what is he doing? What are they doing? But because they remain on that faith, hope, and love, and maybe one at the time is stronger than the other and in different places. But as long as they have those three things, even when they show up and people are trying to take advantage of them. I mean, you look at the Jacob and Laban and all that, and it's messy. But even the people who are trying to take advantage of this person, whether it's Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and so forth, so on, the people who are committed to the faith, hope, and love usually come out on the end, if not all the time, on the sunny side. It doesn't mean there weren't struggles and they didn't die or there wasn't sickness or any of that stuff, but it was just they came out differently.
Yeah, and I'm glad you put it that way, because I try to remind people when we're going through this, there is nothing in these three fundamentals that demands perfection. Nothing. Yeah. In fact, in 2 Peter chapter 1, those verses above where he lays out diligently seeking what it looks like, he says, for this reason. Well, that reason is because God has provided everything you need for life.
That's good stuff. Yeah. Well, and that word steadfastness carries with it the idea of we're pushing through difficulties, and some of that may be self-made difficulties, and some of that may be other things outside of us. But as I was thinking through Hebrews 11, you get to Hebrews 12:1, seeing that you're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside the hindrances, the things, the stumbling blocks, the prophetic, when you were talking about the verse in the Old Testament where he says, what are we laying aside or casting off, whatever that was. I'm forgetting the verse.
Yeah, I think one word was weights, but
in Hebrews 12, but he says we're throwing off those things and looking to Jesus. There's the hope part of it, and so, man, it all just ties together. That's good stuff.
The mission of Heritage Christian University is simple. They aim to advance the churches of Christ by equipping servants through undergraduate and graduate programs. HCU produces effective communicators of the gospel, focusing on evangelism and a commitment to Scripture. Heritage Christian University offers 5 degrees: Associate of Arts in Biblical Studies, Bachelor of Arts in Biblical Studies, Master of Arts, Master of Ministry, and Master of Divinity. HCU is accredited by the Association for Biblical Higher Education and is an associate member of the Association of Theological Schools. Since 1968, Heritage Christian University has offered affordable degrees in biblical studies, allowing graduates to thrive in their ministries without the burden of loan debt. In fact, most graduates finish at HCU without owing anything for their education. For the spring 2024 semester, HCU is offering full tuition scholarships for the graduate level students. For more information about the scholarships they offer, visit www.hcu.edu. HCU invites you to the 2024 Heritage event at the Marriott Shoals Conference Center. Join them on Saturday, August 24th for an incredible night of music from the legendary Ricky Skaggs and Kentucky Thunder. General admission tickets and table sponsorships are available for purchase. Visit hcu.edu to purchase your tickets today. If you think HCU is the perfect university for you, visit hcu.edu to schedule a tour or apply today. Heritage Christian University helps you thrive in your ministry. I'm going to jump in here on one more fun question before we wrap up our time together. And give us the 1 to 3 people that you'd like to have a meal with, not named Jesus from the Bible. We won't let you get the easy one there.
Okay. If I were going to have a meal, it'd be the Apostle John, probably.
It's a good choice.
Yeah.
John's
choice.
solid. Yeah. Favorite gospel out of those. I don't like. Are you allowed to have a favorite gospel? If you are, John's my favorite. Gospel.
It's my favorite. I guess I would prefer to have them all in parallel so that I can really get the whole story. But he speaks to me in ways that sometimes the others don't.
Yeah. So it's good stuff.
That's awesome. Well, Jason, I sure do appreciate you taking time to join us. This has been great. I'm always reading books like that and trying to get better in life. Of course, there's no better place to start than with the Bible.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me.
Solid information. I think everybody's going to be blessed with. So if you listen to the episode, share it with some folks, and the episodes, I should say, share it with some folks out there and let them know, because I think everybody will be blessed by it.
This episode of Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis is brought to you by Daisy's Place. In 2003, little Daisy was fighting for her life. Each time she went into ICU, Carolyn, her mom, had no place to put her things or rest. Do you have a story like mine? When your loved one is in the hospital, the last thing you need to worry about is a place to rest. Daisy's Place is a free place to stay in Florence, Alabama, while your loved ones need you the most. Daisy's Place needs you. Share your gifts as a volunteer, spread the word, donate, and sponsor to help serve others in their time of need. Go to daisysplace.org. That's DAISY-PLACE.org. Or give Carolyn a call at 256-629-6729. That's 256-629-6729.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.